So am I going live?
That's up to you. Okay, we're live and everything's live and Is that it? Is that it? All right, that's it. All right. Hi everybody. Welcome to Political Head Trauma. And tonight we got waiting in the wings. We'll be chatting with Ryan Carver, who's running for county sheriff out here. So we're excited to talk to him, get his perspective on things and stuff. And I do want to talk about that that Antifa trial that just happened.
What? Antifa doesn't exist.
And I want to talk about it, but I want to talk about mostly about the media's coverage I've seen of it and how they are bound and determined to be our worst enemy. But anyway, so let's kick this off. We'll do the intro and then we'll come back and bring Mr. Carver on.
Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Welcome everybody to KMMU and Political Head Trauma, where if Head Trauma had a podcast,
it would sound like this.
I'm Holly. This is Jared.
Yeah, Holly's. So for everyone watching, not on TikTok, Holly's going to be looking that way a lot because she's doing her first foyer into TikTok live, and she's just giddy about it.
I am, and you can find it at Holly_Utah. So this is our first TikTok live, and we want to bring more people in to see our show and learn all we can to share what's going on in the state and the world, as well as in our humble county. So everybody tuning in, thank you. And for those of you who are tuning in tonight with us, thank you. We are introducing Ryan Carver tonight. He is a candidate running for sheriff of Tooele County, and he's a good guy. I've gotten to know him well, and he's worked at West Valley City. He's worked for Taylorsville City, and he's also
pull that mic a little bit.
He's also been, I think, 3 tours.
That's perfect right there.
In the military. So we appreciate his service, and we look forward to talking to him this evening.
Yep. And without further ado, let's bring him on. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys?
Good. Doing good. So, tell us about yourself. Tell us, all the stuff.
I'm old and grumpy. I am currently a running candidate for sheriff of Tooele County. I was born and raised in Utah. I joined the U.S. Navy many moons ago, what seems like an eternity ago, and kind of spent my life gallivanting around the globe. Post 9/11, toured in operations in Afghanistan, operations supporting actions in Iraq aboard the USS Princeton. Did quite a few different forays into some more arid regions of the planet, but I spent a lot of time learning a whole lot of things that not everybody gets a chance to learn, and decided when my time in the military was over, I came back here wanting to do something constructive. So I became a police officer, worked for West Valley, worked patrol, FTO, worked the road, sex crimes detective, worked with a major crimes response team, CIT, mental health awareness, and now I am a patrol sergeant with the Taylorsville City Police Department.
Fantastic. Tell me, when did you decide that you were going to run, and when did you decide to become a Republican?
So I have actually been, I know there's been some issues with, I have actually been a Republican, or at least a conservative-minded individual my whole life. You know, honestly, when I was a kid, Republican was Ronald Reagan. A Republican was, it was something different than what some people might define it today. And so I've always been a conservative minded person. I've always considered myself a Republican. I did do a little bit of time with the Forward Party because it was more of a center of the road thing, but I was trying to figure out some stuff for a friend of mine regarding the Senate seat for District 11. And when that wasn't for me, I returned to the party that I've always basically been registered with, and I've always felt a kindred understanding with. So, like I said, as far as a Republican goes, I know that today things are a little bit different than they were when I grew up, but I've always been a conservative-minded person anyway.
Fantastic. And when you started, I heard one of your lives where you were talking about being a patrol sergeant and pulling people over to give them gift cards and things like that when they've done something great. I'm just curious how I didn't know that was legal. I didn't know you could pull someone over for without probable
the good
cause.
thing about, the thing here is when you see somebody that has done something that you don't normally see people do correctly. The thing about every vehicle on the road is there's always a reason you can stop a vehicle. If they do something very well, or you're like, wow, I can't believe that they remembered to do that. Then they make an improper right-hand turn. You pull them over that way, and you can talk to them about what they did exceptionally well and what they did that really made your day. You say, you are one of the few people I have seen that remembers a turn signal, or you are one of the few people that I've seen that, does A, B, C, or D, whichever the thing is that you're talking to them about. But the basic value of it is to have a more constricted or a more constructive involvement with the public. Most of the times when I'm doing traffic stops, those are the people in middle America that are going to work. They're trying to make things work. They're trying to feed their families. They're trying to make sure the kids have the sports and dance stuff, and everybody's getting to school, and their lives are being productive. They're going to churches. So when I'm dealing with them as a police officer on a simple traffic stop, the goal is to correct a behavior, sure, but sometimes it's also to have an interaction with someone who is now having a bad day because the police are behind them, when you can do that differently than just, hey, sign here, press hard, 5 copies, like we used to say in the old days. As far as pulling people over, you have to have probable cause to justify a stop on a person. So just because I see them do something right doesn't mean I'm just out willy-nilly stopping people. I mean, I may pull into a parking lot where they pulled into, like if they go in to get a coffee or something like that, and I may say, hey, hold on a minute, and then give them some encouragement just to have their day go. Because the thing is I go to a lot of rough stuff, and even though the average citizen doesn't necessarily do that, it doesn't mean they aren't having a rough day. And so if I can frame the discussion somewhat different, we may have talked when sometimes I do the spelling bee stop, and it's a way to have a different interaction with a citizen who may not deal with police very often. So to try and keep it positive, to try and keep it learning, there are better ways to do it than just focusing on the negative.
So explain the spelling bee stop for those who don't know.
So it's levity, I have found, can increase people's learning as well as their understanding of why it is you're talking to them. So sometimes I will be watching a stop sign and they'll roll through the stop sign. Now I can pull them over and go, hey, you didn't stop. You didn't come to a complete stop. You know, this code is what you have to make a complete stop. You have to do A, B, C, and D. Or I can approach with a different way of speaking to them. Am I looking for somebody who may be armed? Yes. Am I looking for all of the things that have kept me alive over the years? Sure. But can I construct my involvement with that person differently to put them at ease? Well, sometimes I do what's called spelling bee. So I will come up and I go, hi, I'm Sergeant Carver of the Taylorsville Police Department. The reason why I stopped you is you misspelled stop back there. And we're conducting a motorized spelling bee today. And you added an O and a W instead of an O and a P. And let's talk about that. And then once they come into, oh, yeah, I'm not being a jerk. I'm not just there to correct their mistake, but I'm there to recognize that everybody makes mistakes. I mean, can you tell me that you haven't seen a cop roll through a stop sign before? I mean, everybody does. The thing is just because your job is to enforce the law, it doesn't mean you have to have a negative interaction with people every time you do that. So that's kind of, if people are tense, they're upset, especially depending on, their belief systems, depending on who they are, just having a police officer behind them may be something that I wouldn't necessarily think was traumatic, but someone who's been through less in their life maybe does. So it is a way for me to conduct that interaction between the police department or the government and that citizen, and do it in a way that allows them the ability to breathe and to know that I am not just there to be a negative factor in their day. In fact, most of the time when I do traffic stops, I give more warnings than I ever give citations, because if I have a conversation with someone and I think that that warning is going to be sufficient, there's no reason for a citation. Now, if I see that they've had 9 citations for running stop signs or 9 warnings for something, then maybe it's time for a ticket. But all of those things are not set anywhere in particular.
That brings me to my next question. Do police officers have a quota they have to meet? Maybe not a sergeant on patrol, but do everyday road police officers have a quota? Many people accuse them.
Is there an
of meeting
employee
a
of the
quota.
month board in the department? I'm just
Well,
kidding.
there should always be some type of recognition mechanism in any department. Now,
No, what I meant is, I'm just kidding. Like,
quota.
yeah, I know where you're
most
getting at.
tickets.
Does any officer have a quota? The answer to that is absolutely not. Now, what I do I set myself, or like my traffic unit. So Taylorsville has 2 traffic officers. Their specific job is traffic stops, tickets, accidents, stuff like that. What we set them is, we say, okay, you're getting paid for X amount of hours. We need to ensure that enforcement is being done. We need to ensure that people are being educated about law enforcement, about what mistakes are being made, and why safety is such an important factor when we're talking about a 2,000-pound machine that most of the time people are looking at their phones while they're navigating it down the highway. So what we do is we say, I want to see from you as a traffic officer, your whole job is traffic. I want to see you do 10 contacts in a day. So let's say 2 contacts an hour for 10 hours. So 20 or 10, whatever we decide is a good round number, giving them the ability to take breaks, giving them the ability to do accidents and to assist in other things. So I will say, with my 2 traffic units, being the day sergeant, I'll say, hey, I would like you to do 2 or 10 contacts in a 10-hour period. So what they are then free to do is go out and issue, if they make a traffic stop, I believe that you should always issue something. You should issue a written warning, because what that does is, if you choose not to cite, you should give the warning, because then it allows the person to understand that this was the code, this was the violation, and the officer explains it, and then they have those references to move on with. For the purpose of the citation, like I said, if you roll up and somebody has no driver's license and you run back and you run them in the system and you find out they've had 3 warnings for never obtained DL, you need to take a different action, because obviously the conversation, the education aspect hasn't taken hold. And so you would then issue that person a citation. But those things are regulated on the level of the officer. They're not regulated on the level of anyone higher. We just set, I don't want to have an officer getting paid by the tax money of people who work hard and then have them sitting in a parking lot for 12 hours. That's not fair to the public, and it's not fair to the people who are going to be injured if we don't do our job. So I will set, I want 15 contacts today, and tomorrow I want 10 contacts, but they may end up taking 3 or 4 major accidents and they don't get any of those contacts. It just really depends on what we're doing and what are the main complaints that are coming into, like, city council, such as speeding, parking, people running red lights, people hitting people in crosswalks, school zone infractions. So if we're getting more of those, a lot of times we will shift those traffic resources to address individual problems that come and go throughout the year, and we address things that are coming up to city council.
Well, let's get to the meat and potatoes.
All right.
What has been your motivation to run for Tooele County Sheriff?
So when I moved out here 3 years ago, I was born and raised in Salt Lake County, and Salt Lake County is not my home anymore. I know I have a lot of good friends that live there and stuff, but it's become a rat race. It doesn't stand for any of the things that I find are important to me. Whenever, as a police officer, I'll give you for instance, as a police officer, I want the sheriff's office in Salt Lake County to deal with people being booked into jail in a way that it isn't just a revolving door. Like, there are a lot of officers and a lot of agencies that just don't book people on things that they should be booked on, just simply because the jail just rolls them right out the other side. There's absolutely no accountability. And so I left to Salt Lake County, and I moved out here because you could be in a smaller area, you could be in a more rural area that was more about what I find to be important to me. Because I can take off the badge, I can take off the uniform, and in my lifetime, I've earned the right to be a citizen of this country, and I've earned the right to have the right, the left, the front, and behind me reflect what I believe is important. And so I moved out here because there is a more rural mindset. And honestly, what I knew about the Tooele County Sheriff's Office really wasn't much. So when I moved out here, naturally, as a law enforcement officer, I begin to start to ask questions, start to talk with friends of mine who work with me in Taylorsville, or that work with me in West Valley that live out here. So what is your thoughts on this? How's things going? What do I need to be aware of? What do I not? Are drugs a huge issue? Is gangs moving out? Just things that you want to know, right? Before you spend money, for wherever it is you're going to stay. And so I came out here and I started talking with people, and I started meeting some of the deputies. And there was not a lot of, there was good, but there was things that were being said to me that I just at first didn't actually believe. I was like, there's no way that things are going to be the way some of these people are telling me things are. And so I started poking around and I started talking to people I knew and to other people I didn't know, but they were friends of a friend, and started talking to them about the sheriff's office, about the capabilities, what the sheriff's office does, what is different from what agencies that I've worked at, how the mantra is. Every agency has a different focus. Salt Lake City has a different focus than, say, West Valley or, say, UPD or even Taylorsville. So I understand that administrations will set what they want the focus to be. But for me, I live here. And now that I live here, I am at the twilight side of my career. I have had a good career. I have had an honorable career. I've worked very hard. And so I was talking with people. A person who is a friend of mine who lives out in Grantsville suggested that I run for sheriff. I really didn't think that that was something that I would ever do. But in talking with people, I felt there was something I could offer. And having worked the road and investigative details now and still, and working in an administrative capacity on the lower side, obviously, as a sergeant, because I'm in a small department, I understand the bird's eye view of things. I also understand the trenches. And so I thought that there was something that I could offer. And if I believe that I can make something better, then I am obligated to do something if I can. That's
what
how
are
I look at it.
some of the specific changes that you would like to make?
So obviously, one of the biggest things is I need to look at the morale situation that has been communicated to me through not only current employees of the agency, but also past employees of the agency. And when I was talking with some of these people, I even asked them as far as to say, when you left, were you terminated for some reason, or did you just leave and went to another agency? So that I knew I was getting a balanced opinion of the agency. Because here's the thing, I was in the United States Navy. The first 15 people you meet as you're walking up to your first shift will all tell you, oh, I'm so sorry, you got a sign here, this is the worst ship in the Navy. You can't go based off any of that. You have to go based off of you determining how things are. You can't just pick the one disgruntled guy and go, that's how it is. And so I'm old enough, I've been through enough to know, talk to people who left and went to other agencies, but didn't have to. Not that you discount people who had issues at the agency, because guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I've worked at agencies where an administration can decide they don't like it and they can just get rid of you. And that happens. And anybody that says it doesn't it does.
West Valley, for example.
Well, and the thing is, just because, I don't know, I guess I should say it this way. Just because there are some bad eggs in any agency doesn't mean the agency is an overall is a really bad agency. But
Right.
When you have a command climate, and I'm telling you right now, I've worked for generals that didn't matter to me. When I was in the Navy, if Admiral so-and-so, the commanding or the Commodore of the Air Wing, was pissed off about something, E3 and below Ryan Carver, when I was way younger, didn't really care, because I probably couldn't have picked out his name on a book other than in the command lineup of pictures. So I'm a little bit older now, and in talking with people, I wanted to work on command climate. I also believe that capabilities make or break an agency. And currently, our agency out here doesn't have any canines. It doesn't have canines that belong to the agency for apprehension, for narcotics intervention or interdiction, and it doesn't even have, like bloodhounds, to be utilized for tracking. I was a bloodhound canine officer, and I will tell you that the vast majority of people I tracked were kids with autism who had wandered away, or elderly who were suffering from dementia or a memory type mental illness. And most of the time, me and my dog deployed to find them. We don't have those capabilities. I sat back and
we used to have a canine female.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember because the sheriff's department would bring it around to the schools, and
I think her name was Lily.
She was so cute. And I'm not sure the exact reason why they ended the program. But I know it's an expensive addition.
Sure, it is. The reality here is, though, everything and anything that we do is expensive. Everything and anything we do, it can be a liability, but that doesn't mean you don't do it. The reality here is, and I've heard some statements about how to train a canine, to purchase the canine, to outfit the vehicle, to ensure that the daily or the monthly set 40 for the training for the officer and for the dog, all of those things have to be done, and none of those things are free. You're correct. The thing here is, show me a family who is concerned over whether or not it was expensive that dog be there when they need their autistic son found.
The hard part is you've got to get that past the taxpayers prior to the event.
Well, that's
going to be your biggest struggle on any civilian side acquiring is you'll have to get it past the county council.
And you've been to county council meetings, have you?
You'll have to get it past the taxpayers. And right now, the county and the municipalities have been hit for taxes year after year. And right now, if you were to come there with begging for a nickel, they would probably throw rotten fruit at you.
Probably.
Remember, our sheriff actually, Paul Wimmer, he had to battle our council to get raises for the department, much needed raises. Now, in all fairness, our council required a study, even though he'd also gone and done the study himself. But I mean, he knew he would win. But in the meantime, he's losing officers because they can't afford to work here.
Just losing. And again,
and when he did get the money approved, the council handed it over, thankfully, but it was a long process.
Oh, absolutely.
So for a dog, for the equipment they get, usually they get it through grants. If there was a grant to get a canine, I'm sure they would get it or apply
there are
for
grants
it.
To get canines.
Yeah. And so those things
and they
take
don't
time.
Have the dog. So I guess my question would be, first of all, how do you go about doing it? I don't know how many grants Paul has put in for, and I can see the situation here. Not a problem. I don't know how many grants Paul has put in for, and I have no way to determine that right now. I could grandma request a number of things. I'm running for sheriff. I'm doing the best that I can. As far as how I would do it, I've already put everything about how I would do it on my website, and I have been absolutely open and honest with everybody on that. So the first and foremost thing for me is determining what capabilities you have to have at a department. Okay. You have to have certain capabilities at a department. And one of those capabilities is canines. Okay. If you, let's say you live in Tooele, right? And you pay your taxes to Tooele, and Tooele talks about, so they charge X amount, they get a dog, right? But their dog is constantly being used outside of Tooele for another agency. That can become a problem because the people of Tooele have paid taxes to the county, but they've also paid taxes to their department, and their information or their money should be handling Tooele. Now, I will tell you that assisting any agency is going to be something we're all going to do, but assisting them for every time a dog is needed is not fair to the city of Tooele, and it's not fair to the people that are having to wait on the dog. So if you're constantly always having to go to another agency for a capability that is a tried and true police tactic, that's a problem. Now, for me, I have detailed that if I decide a program needs to be brought to the agency, the first and foremost thing is, what does this program need to look like? How many dogs? Are we talking 2 dogs, one for the jail, one for the road, and one for search and rescue or tracking? Then, okay, if you have that, you figure out what the dogs cost, what the outfitting the vehicles cost is, what the overall certification process costs. And then you take that amount, you take the bookends of that program, and then you start looking at what grants are available to cover the various parts of that program. The purpose for that is to try to make the program revenue neutral for the county and the taxpayer, if at all humanly possible. Now, I know grants can come good this year and maybe not next year, but the purchase of the dog is a one-time thing. The purchase of the hot dog system for the truck is a one-time thing. So you have certain aspects that you can defeat before you even need to go to county. The purpose of the program is to solve a need for the community, but how it's done can address tax issues, can address the needs of the people to keep more of their money where it belongs. But you also are still obligated to have the capability. Sorry, that's I understand that hasn't happened, but in my view, and if I am elected, my belief is Tooele County Sheriff should have the capability.
What about when surrounding departments have it and are willing to back up?
Grantsville has one that is a electronic sniffing dog, and Tooele just got one that is a narcotics dog. I don't know whether the dogs are also certified for tracking. I don't know whether the dogs are certified for apprehension. I'm sure that the one out in Grantsville isn't, because it is an electronics dog. So
I just want a side note real quick. That's for Grantsville to go after let's call it what it is, a pedophile catching dog. It's almost like Grantsville Police Department reads the news coming out of its high school football coaches lately. Just a side note.
Yeah. Well, that's
Grantsville tends to lose a football coach to this every 6 years on average.
Well, and I am all in favor of any dog that will help catch that.
Yeah.
The reality here, though, is
I just want that dog to be really, really hungry, and the handler to be really, really slow to catch up.
Well, the thing about that dog is it doesn't actually do apprehensions. It just finds the naughty hardware.
Can we combine them? I mean,
well,
logistically speaking, have you seen one of those Ovcharka Caucasus dogs, the ones the Russians use as prison dogs?
Yeah.
Ovcharka?
There we go.
Ovcharka. Yeah, they're a lot like the what is it? The Tibetan Mastiff.
Yeah, a little bigger than the Tibetan Mastiff.
Yeah,
and
I like ride them into battle, Holly.
I do love the Malinois. I mean,
they would eat.
Yeah,
they would eat a battalion of Malinois.
Yeah,
and I love Malinois, but these things are massive. But I remember watching a show about Russian prisons, and they asked the
the best police dog?
They asked the guard, well, what happens if they get away? And the guard said, well, they'll come back when they're done. Meaning
they find and get done eating, they'll be back.
So, and in Russia, I can see them getting away with that, because if you're on the run, and I mean, they can shoot you in the back in Russia.
Well, the good thing is the Russians also build their prisons out where nobody has anywhere to run to. And there's usually not a temperature factor that gives them much time based on what they're dressed in.
Yeah, it's they are, but anyways,
they look unreal. They're so big.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think an Ovcharka and a Tibetan Mastiff are along the same family lines. But,
yes.
Look at that thing. I mean, that is a thing that would maul a black bear.
I mean, I got to be honest with you. If given a choice, and I don't know, the big rock was coming at us from space or whatever. If we had one less hurrah, I would not mind getting a saddle for one of those, because I think it would just be way funner than a horse. But
Right. One of those
but yeah,
across
And a lot deadlier than
the
a horse.
wasteland.
well, I mean, if that's what you're up against, I guess the deadlier the better.
Hey, Ryan, will you
Yes.
share a little bit about your time in the military? I know, did you do 3 tours?
So I did. So what I did was I did a tour on the USS Princeton for the actual war in 2003.
What was
And-
your MOS?
So I was in the U.S. Navy. So I, at the
Well,
time, was an
The
aviation.
job?
What's that?
Your
Aviation
specific job?
machinist rate. So it's called a rate in the Navy.
Okay.
I was on board the cruiser with the air debt. My job was to keep the 2 aircraft on board the cruiser flying, to give the cruiser over the horizon capabilities. Now, when we fly, we have AWs on board. Most of the time, so an SH-60 Bravo at the time was basically an anti-submarine helicopter. You could mount a Gauss 16 on the open door side. All it is a nice gray Blackhawk is what it amounts to.
Mhm.
But it is built for, so there's 2 different kinds. This SH-60 Bravo has your AW, and it has a sonobuoy launcher. And the purpose of that is you can pop sonobuoys, and you can corral submarines, and you can do tracks, both passive and active sonar, to do that. So when we did the war, we did all of that. Then when I wanted to, when I joined the Navy, I wanted to be a Navy military cop, because I knew at some point I wanted to go into law enforcement. And so when 9/11 happened, before 9/11, you had to be E5 and 25 years of age to be a military cop. Well, who goes into the military as an E5 or 25? The answer is nobody. So the reality there is you had to do something. So I got to work with F-18s on board carriers. And then when I left F-18s, I went to the small boys, which is a cruiser, destroyer, frigate, and worked with helicopters. Once 9/11 occurred, my enlistment was just about up. In fact, it ended, what was it? The 28th of October, and I was deployed for the Iraq War. So I got promised by the Navy that I could go to Navy Master at Arms School. And so I agreed to stay and re-enlist, and went and became a Master at Arms. Was stationed in Greece, and then the Navy did what we called, so it's a forward deployed special boat. So it's not SWIC. It is like 19-meter rib boats, and instead where you forward deploy and you take care of different ports, different areas like Bahrain, UAE, stuff like that. And so with Iraq going on, you had, well, at that time, Afghanistan was also going on, but with Iraq kicking off, you had a lot more pull, because Afghanistan's a landlocked country, for naval personnel in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf, much like we have right now. So what they did was they created what was called Noble Eagle. So it's individual augmentees, and I got to go and augment Army units doing things in Iraq and UAE and all those places that the Navy doesn't normally go do. And then I came back for my shore duty and got to work at the Navy MEPS, or the MEPS here in West Valley, when it was in West Valley. And when I got to leave there, I got offered the best orders, I thought, and that was Afghanistan. So I took orders to Afghanistan to be protective services for combatant commanders, touring the theater and meeting with, their troops, because you have Air Force troops, you have Navy, you have Army, you have Marine Corps, and you have commanding generals, and generals need bullet shields. And so I got the opportunity to go to the DoD Protective Services Academy at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, or as they call it, Fort Lost in the Woods. Then I got to go to Fort Bliss, which is anything but, and we went across the border into New Mexico. And if I remember correctly, it was Camp Maverick, but it was basically a place where you learned to be in the Middle East with Middle Eastern people as you learn to do your job. So there's fake towns and there's fake buildings and there's fake all these things, and people dressed in the dress, and people making the, you know, talking and doing, and then trying to grab you, and all the things that they need you to prepare for in the Army Combat Refresher course and all of that. And then I got to deploy to Afghanistan. The thing that was unique about my orders is that for some reason, and to this date, I still don't understand why, but the orders for General McChrystal, or at the time, ISAF, which is Commanding General International Security Assistance Force, which is the NATO mission in Afghanistan, his detail or protective detail team had 50% Navy and 50% Army. Now, nobody can explain to me why a landlocked country you would want 50% sailors guarding your general instead of Army and Marine Corps. But
when they said Navy, was it Navy or was it Department of the Navy Marine Corps?
No. It was Navy. It was straight up
Navy.
In fact,
I wonder
we didn't
if
even have a Marine anywhere on our team for the combatant commanders, other than for the Marine commanding units or commanders for units that were in theater. So it was straight up Navy and Army. And to this day, I still couldn't tell you why.
I wonder if that was maybe a pissing match between McChrystal and the Marines.
You know, I don't know, because McChrystal, when McChrystal got promoted, he went in and replaced General McKiernan. General McKiernan was the 2-star ISAF, or it became a 4-star position. And when McChrystal came in, he was brand new in there. I think he'd been in there maybe 8 months or so when I got there. Now, the possibility is why they use the Navy is because we will do some stupid stuff. And we don't need to be trained for it. We are really good at picking up being an idiot. And sometimes that's beneficial for, you know, the Army. But the reality is I ended up being his advanced lead. So my job was to take my motorcade, which had an assigned number of soldiers and sailors, and my job was to roll out. So if he was going to go to UNAMA, which is the UN ambassador's residence, if he was going to go to the palace or the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of the Interior, the Supreme Court, wherever he was going to go, you know, the Parliament down on IED Alley, wherever it was, my job was to get briefed on the routes, roll out, and I would go early enough that if anything happened to us, we could get information back and either have the general take a different route or fly him to where needed or cancel it altogether. And then when I would get there, if it was at the palace or if it was at the Ministry of Defense, my job was to grease the skids. So basically, I would leave one of my people in my motorcade at each waypoint where the general could be bound up by either a gate or, you know, whatever the case is. And my person was there to ensure that at no time did the commanding general of the NATO forces and U.S. forces Afghanistan get held up. So it was grease the skids, and then I would be wherever that meeting was going to take place. I would indicate who was coming to speak, to receive the general, and then move from there. Then if we had any out of the city stuff, then some of us would fly out with him and take care of any issues or just be there to catch any bullets that might come our way. Sometimes he liked to do what was called shopping, and he liked to show people that Afghanistan was relatively safe. And so sometimes he would want to stop in a market or whatever the case was, and you would dress down in a sense. You wouldn't have your plates, your any of that. You'd have a pistol or whatever shoved, you know, in your trousers and stuff, and you would be around while the general was in that, you know, talking to people and taking pictures and stuff, and then he'd hop back in the cars he'd go away. And then my job at that point would be to ghost him back or to whatever his next deal was. And then if there was any vehicle issues, weapons issues or anything like that, if we didn't have a schedule where the general or another general was on board, then I would roll through the Kabul to go to Camp Phoenix or Eggers, Camp Eggers, or NKC, which stands for New Kabul Compound. So that's what I did.
I'm curious, how dangerous was it? Was the public in general happy to see you?
No.
Were they welcoming the Afghanis?
So if you had an IED go off, and we had a few, it was a tough scenario. I mean, how do you say it? So the first thing is when you have an incident take place, like when ISAF HQ was attacked in August of 2009, the first thing you have to do is fight through the initial shock of what's occurred. And if it's an IED, the first thing is, are you dead or are you not? If you are not dead, then it's time to move. You have to set security. You have to shut that down, because at one point you had an IED go off, and at another point in the process, they shifted tactics to where they would have a secondary group with what were called BB IEDs, or body-borne IEDs, that would exploit the breach, come in and detonate, and then you would have mass casualty scenario. So it depends on the issue, what happened. Be it was we had an Italian kid, the motorcade was he had just gotten back from Italy, and on Route White, just outside Masood Circle, that motorcade got hit, and he was freshly back, so he wanted to take the turret, and the force of the explosion cut him in half below the nipple line, and he fell off the back of the truck, and the truck got forced 32 feet into oncoming traffic and into the side of the road. The people then see the death and the destruction, and they get mad, and they don't get mad at the Taliban, they got mad at us. So sometimes you had to defend that scene. Sometimes you had to push them back. Sometimes the carnage was enough that they stayed away. But it depends on the circumstances. No IED was the same. And, you know, if people attack a base, I know how to deal with that. That's you shoot them. But when they blow up part of it, you have other concerns. There were 29 general officers on that base, and frankly, you can't let them get killed. So if the bad guy comes to the front door and knocks with, I don't know, X amount of C4 or whatever they're using in a stolen ISAF vehicle that happens to have the passes to let them in the build or in the, in the perimeter, and they detonate it, you have an obligation to keep 29 general officers alive, and you do that. The people, there were a lot of people that were really nice. The thing is you don't know if they're being nice because you're armed and standing there, or if they're going to be nice to the Taliban the minute they show up 5 minutes after you leave. You're never sure of that. And it's not really relevant while you're standing there, unless you're trying to provide safety and security for an American convoy, Marines. It doesn't matter who it is, the Brits, the Germans, you're there to keep them alive. And, if you run across a problem like people with RPGs and a Toyota Corolla, and you've got an American convoy behind you, the question is, do you keep going to your objective, which might be the subway at Camp Phoenix, or do you create a problem for those people so that American convoy doesn't stumble on them? Those are always the choices you have to make. It depends. If you have a general, you go through and you do what you have to do.
I was wondering, I know you've seen a lot and you've lost a lot in your tours and in law enforcement. I know that, you've done so much for your brothers and sisters in blue, and that you took that home with you. In the interview that we had when we first met, it was amazing because you were also one of the officers that came to collect my father after he had passed. And it was the most beautiful thing to see you guys in West Valley City give him such a honorable death. I mean, taking him to the mortuary, standing guard by him until we buried him, and then up until the end of the funeral and thereafter. I mean, we were getting lots of good cops reaching out to us and offering to help and giving condolences. And the FOP especially was so good to us. I know you have a lot of that you've brought back, probably like most veterans. They bring some of that back, but you have mentioned about mental health. And I was so interested when you and I spoke that I spoke with the FOP, which is the Fraternal Order of Police.
Right.
They back law enforcement officers. They're private. And so when I spoke to them, they have mental health outreach for officers who need it but don't want to go to their department and ask for it for fear that it'll put on their jacket and then they can't get rid of it. Then I started talking to a couple of deputies at the sheriff's office, and they also have mental health available, and it's given and offered at least a few times a year or immediately after a terrible situation. It's offered, and the deputies don't get any recourse from that if they attend. In fact, they're almost obligated to attend whether they need it or not, because what they just went through was horrible. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, seeing how you were when we spoke, that was like your number one issue was mental health.
The thing about mental health for first responders, mental health for military is the biggest problem is military first responders were our own worst enemy. I go to therapy once a week to try and put some semblance of understanding to some of the losses that I have witnessed, that I like I was telling you on the night, I think it was you that I was telling, I once overheard a president make the statement while I was in Kabul that regardless of conditions on the ground in 2014, we will be withdrawing. Okay. I'm here now. So if the conditions on the ground don't matter in 2014, why do we need a larger pile of bodies till then? So you have to, when you come home, you signed up for those things. And I don't have a problem if I'd have not made it. I don't have a problem. And I don't have a problem with the sleepless nights and, the not liking the 4th of July and not liking some of these other things and not peopling, as I put it. Do I go out and about and, hang out at theaters and rodeos and things? I like rodeos, but, do I go watch movies? Do I go to outdoor festivals? No, I don't. And I'm not sorry that I don't. It's rough on me. I've been in a lot of heavy areas with a lot of people and bad things have happened. And a lot of people are not a good thing. When the shit hits the fan, that's not a positive factor. And it is what it is. So I have said, not through the VA. The VA doesn't help me. I don't. I have almost nothing positive.
What? That's unheard of. The VA is an outstanding organization that helps all the veterans.
Of course, if you ask,
he's a veteran as well.
Time. Yeah. So the thing is, you can go up to any VA and look at the number of staff parking spots, and then try and find the veteran ones. That'll tell you without even going in the building what's wrong with the VA.
Well, it's ran by the government. The government. I'm going to say everyone who's listened to the show before, this is on repeat. The government only does one thing, and that's turn gold into shit. That is all the government does. It's all it's ever done. That's all it will do 1,000 years from now. That is all governments do, is they turn gold into shit. That's it.
And, they're good at it. But the thing
there's nothing better.
No,
a goat wouldn't be as good.
No, but the thing there is mental health the thing that kills military, the thing that brings about the 22, the thing that brings about the fact that more officers die from suicide than felonious assault, medical emergency, and car accidents combined is the fact that when you're supposed to wear the cape, how do you take it off? When you're at home and you say, or if you drive and get in an accident, if for everybody else in the world, it says, oh, an accident here. For me, it's off-duty police sergeant did this. So you live your life where you wear the badge or the uniform, because if you're in the military, you can get hauled in front of the CO or your command master chief or the command sergeant major, whoever, for anything you do. So when that's the case, you never, ever address the things that you go through, because what's the point in putting out the fire while the ship's still sinking? So you pack it in, you do the job you got to do. And then when you step away, if you step away from the military and you come and you do first responder, or you do whatever the case is, and you are then you're supposed to be this guy who solves all the problems and fixes everything every day. And by the way, you still got to live so you don't bring discredit upon the agency. Even in your house, the Constitution doesn't apply. You can still get in trouble if you say anything about anybody in your own house. So the reality is there's a stigma to mental illness for just the American citizen. Mm-hmm. So of course there's a stigma for the people we rely on day in and day out to be there when we need them to be there. And so that's why capabilities are such an issue for me. That's why trying to make sure officers, deputies, troopers, whoever, have the tools to be successful, it changes their ability to cope with the job. And when you take and you have LCSWs and you have officer OICI debriefs and you have a command staff that has these things, now just about every agency has them. And if they don't, they're wholly behind. But you still have the stigma that if your chief finds out, or if your deputy chief finds out, or the sheriff finds out, or the colonel at the troopers, whoever, whatever the rank structure is, if they find out, the officer has two things to worry about. What will my fellow brothers and sisters in blue, green, brown, whatever the hell the color is, what are they going to say when they find out I needed help? They haven't needed help. Well, they've needed help, but they haven't gotten help. So am I weaker? Are they going to doubt my ability to come through and save their life when their life is on the line? So people still don't get help. They still don't go for the help.
The stigma is too much.
Horrible. I mean, Mike Valdez with West Valley is dead. He died in 2009 in southern Afghanistan. His body just didn't know it until 2013.
And Mike was a very good friend of mine. I went to junior high school.
I spent 40
he was a
hours
really good friend
looking for him. Every day we would talk. And when it got rough, we would drive away. And I spent 40 hours combing the Jordan River Trail and this freeway and that freeway, this tree, that neighborhood, pinging phones, doing everything, all because stigma is what it is. And I have stood over Cody Brotherson. I have stood over Trooper Ellsworth. I've stood over a lot of people. And you know what? I understand. I know why some people brush their teeth with their front sight. But the thing here is, I have an obligation to do things better. And if telling people that I go seek therapy will get at least one to give it a friggin' shot, I'm going to do that. And I don't care if anybody calls me a loser or that I'm a weak person, or I don't give a damn. what other people say about me. There is so many things in this world right now that are a straight dumpster fire, and all 50 of these states are included. We hate each other. We don't like each other. Nobody is worth anything. I'm not playing the game. I have people that are. They're called veterans. They're called first responders. And I will always be there for them. I cook for them on Thanksgiving. I make sure they can eat with their children. I make sure they can eat with their grandmas, their grandpas. I make sure they can have pie. They can have pancakes in the morning, and they can eat turkey at night. And it doesn't cost them anything, because those memories are something that those kids will remember. And it may be something that keeps that officer from doing the dumbest thing I can think of them doing. Because, no offense, the American public today, it's a hard sell sometimes to some people that the country we live in today is worth the sacrifice some people are putting on the altar. But it is. And I don't know how we're going to get better. I don't know how the blues and the reds are going to come back to, Ronald Reagan used to eat lunch with Tip O'Neill. I mean, there was a time. But right now, I cannot be bothered with whether Antifa, and they do exist, and they're a bunch of morons, and I hope they're listening, but I can't be bothered with how they feel about themselves. Right now, there are 22 a day, and there are a lot of deputies in bad command climate. There are a lot of officers in bad city environments that just need to be told, go ask someone for help. Go find someone that wears a flag somewhere on them. Tell somebody something, for the love of God, but do not do something stupid. If I can run for sheriff in a county that's thus far, I don't even know if they hate me or if they just don't like me because I wasn't born here. But it doesn't deter me from trying to do what I think is right. And if I lose, okay. All right, whatever. I survived Afghanistan. I survived deployments with helicopter blades less than 4 feet from my forehead, turning boats. I'm not concerned over whether somebody thinks I'm a failure because I didn't make sheriff.
No,
I
in
will
fact,
still
it's a
cook
lot harder to
Thanksgiving.
do that. And
Is what it
it's
is.
hard. You're brave. I think it takes a very special person who is brave enough to throw their hat in a ring. And I have a lot of respect for candidates, especially after I became one. It's not
rough.
easy. And you will get people who will hate you that don't even know you. One conversation, it could change their mind. That's why we do this show, is we want people to know the names on the ballot, so they at least see a side of that person that's not just political. We want them to see the person and who they are. And I just know that was something I took away from our meeting. It was mental health. And I think, yes, our first responders, our veterans, they need it, and they need to not be afraid of repercussions for it. And I know that this department, at least what I've learned from the sheriff's department, is that it is a regular thing and it is encouraged. People aren't in trouble for asking for help. Other departments are coming along, but there was a time when we were raising money in the FOP just to be able to afford private therapy for any member that wanted it. And there was
departments that won't.
Yeah.
Make it difficult.
And
The
so the
thing
FOP has made it available to them for those people who do have a department like that. And I'm really glad out here that we have something. But I'm kind of discouraged about mental health for citizens out here, because I've had to deal with some pretty crazy situations with people. And I think mental illness is getting worse. I'm somebody that says make asylums great again. And I say that because if you become sheriff, you're given all these budgets, the jail budget, you've got the department budget, you're chimed in on a lot of other budgets. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that would be helpful to maybe address some of the mentally ill or drug addicted would be for the state to provide funding for rehab or hospital where these people can be watched, not sent to a jail, but, back to drug court, back to, fixing whatever ails them before throwing them in prison forever.
Right.
And I know the sheriff had been promised that by the state. And that's the problem, is the state doesn't always come through. And
Well,
now it's you arrest them and get them off the street for public safety, and they sit. And when they get out, they're still mentally ill or they are still addicted. And it's just a revolving door.
right.
And yet counties like ours, we need the state to consider something like that for the mentally ill we have out here, as well as the drug addicted.
So I will be absolutely honest with you. I don't think. Here's the thing. I created, with a good friend of mine, Ammon Fox, I created a mental health court on the justice court level in West Valley. I created a 12-man or 12 officer response unit in patrol, and we set up a detective unit that half of it attended to all the cases generated in patrol, half of it addressed the mental health court and did the home visits and did the staffings for the court. And we created an entire program, and we didn't have state funding. The thing here is I operate under a rule of I am going to ask permission, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to figure out a way to make it happen. And that's what we did. The mental health court, the problem with mental health court is they only have it on the felony level. Well, the problem is when people have mental illness, they don't have jobs. So they do Class B misdemeanors, Class A misdemeanors, hundreds of them. And nothing is done in that area until they start getting felonies. And at that point, it's prison. It's a huge issue. We need mental health courts in the justice courts. And so what my plan for that is to address that by working with the cities. So Tooele has a court, Grantsville has a court, and I think Judge Dow just recently retired from the county court. What I would like to do is recreate that court that we had in West Valley, bringing in the VA, bringing in a DCFS, bringing in all of the different players in mental health, the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, sitting down and finding a judge who understands two things. One, understands the value of a specialty court. And number two, does not fear applying the stick when it's necessary. Okay, you have the stick and the carrot, but you have judges, they're either all about the stick or they're all about the carrot, and they don't hold anybody to anything. So it's very important you have that balance. And then you work with Grantsville to supply maybe one or two, Tooele, maybe one or two, the county sheriff, maybe one or two, depending on where the mainstay of the cases are. You create the sheriff's office or the sheriff's mental health office or officer for mental health, and you base that court in the county court so that any cases that come to patrol via Tooele, Grantsville, the county sheriff's office, even highway out on the freeways, if it has an illegal connotation to it, but there's a mental health crisis involved, you can dispo those through training on how to conduct the involvement with the officers. So everybody gets trained on the regular 40-hour academy. I have created a second 40-hour academy that addresses the care structure and why the call came into police and what to do with the reports. Then that gets funneled from patrol to the investigations. Investigation screens it, talks to the family, talks to the individual, make sure they're willing to participate in the court. So you have to be willing. And if they're not, you dispo it out through the punishment pipeline. But if they are, then you get them in the court. And the court makes them do group, makes them do individual therapies. They have to have clean UAs, and they have to pay for those things. They can't reoffend as a result of any mental health. So there are factors, and sometimes they may reoffend and they get set back in the process, but it is the process of moving forward to develop more positive behaviors. Is it working every time? No, ma'am. No, sir. But does it work a lot of the time? Yeah, it does.
Well, at least it's something. It's
Just
something.
Because here's the thing. I have always said, if you take your purse, or like me, I take my wallet out at a concert and I set it on the seat and I take a credit card or whatever because I don't want to take everything in with me. I go in, I come out, my card's been smashed and my wallet's gone. I'm a victim of a crime, but I'm also the person that put myself in that position. When you're talking about people with mental illness, you have a young man or woman who's just like everybody else, who grows up, and for the men, it's usually 18 to 24. For women, it's usually a little bit later, 27 to 30, right in that area. They have the same hopes and dreams everybody else does. Same hopes and dreams. The young, they want to be a family member. They want to be a dad. They want to be a cop or a scientist or whatever it is they want to do. But then they have a break. Doctors can't tell them why it happened. Can't tell them where it came from. Can't tell them how to have avoided it. So if you don't know how to avoid it, if you had no way to operate around it, you're not to blame for it. And so the last true, honest to God victim are people with type 1 mental illnesses. This is what happened. Now, addiction, narcotics-based psychosis, I'm sorry. And I know there's going to be people out there that are going to crucify me because I believe in accountability and responsibility. I know addiction's a medical problem, but I also know you put that in your face at some point. And so the responsibility is as much yours as it is the dealer or the doctor. They all start with D anymore. The marijuana cards and all the other things, because guess what? Life hurts. You know what? It's hurt ever since time began. The lesson is in the pain. It's not in always feeling happy-go-lucky. Sometimes it's the pain that teaches you the value of what you've been through, but not in America. So I'm trying to be more positive. But the thing is, addiction is a major problem. I understand. And a lot of people with mental illness end up self-medicating with meth or heroin or marijuana because, let's ask this, do they normally have jobs? Do they normally have insurance? No. Is an $800 a month antipsychotic pill more or less expensive than a dime bag of meth?
Yeah.
It's all about how they feel, not whether it's actually working. So having the courts, having the effort and saying, yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, we got to have meetings with the governor and Huntsman and everyone else with the dogs and with whatever. Yeah, I know that nobody wants to spend the money, but it doesn't mean I can't make it rough for them to say no.
Well, one, I agree with you. And the homeless population is, there's a sprinkling of, mental problems in there, but mental problems are universal, but the majority are drug-induced mental problems. I have a very good friend I grew up with who's schizophrenic now because of drugs. Drugs will take your brain and make you into something.
We call it narcotics-based psychosis.
Yeah. And it's permanent for him. He hears voices all the time. He's in and out of
The younger you start,
right now he's in,
the worse it is on your brain.
I think he's in Pleasant Grove's jail right now. Yeah. And he'll be in jail. He'll get out. He'll spend a couple months out. His psychosis causes him to get very inappropriate with the female species, and he'll go right back into jail. And that's his life forever. He's 50 years old.
There's no rehabbing that.
How many victims does he make by that being his life? That's the issue. With mental illness, you have to ask yourself, who's the solution for? The person who's mentally ill, or is it for society?
There is that. Now, we also have to account for the ultimate libertarian voice of reason has to step in and say, at what expenditure are you willing to go to achieve this golden land? Because we've seen where that ends up, where you're willing to strip the populace dry to achieve your ideal, and that ends up with 50 million dead in 3 years.
What do you mean?
So to say I'm going to spearhead a program no matter what, that's where you get Chairman Mao and the Red Guard or the Red Brigade. Or
I don't think I'm really Chairman Mao.
Well, no, but the idea that, and I'm not criticizing because I understand you're passionate about it, but I'm still at my core, I am a libertarian. I'm an individualist. I am a small government, a capital S, capital G, small government person. I think government has never, ever, and someone please prove me wrong, provided a solution. Never once. They've provided some trade-offs, but they've never provided a solution.
There was the asylums back in the day.
And who shut those down?
Well, I guess my question to you then would be, what is the solution that the individual would bring? Because then
I think lead poisoning is a good solution.
How the individual brings a solution is you step back to a time before the governments took away posses.
Or you lead poisoning has always worked when
but I'm not suggesting that. But that is a solution. That's where you've got to walk that fine balance.
Well, there's also a constitution that has rights to it that says that a lot of that can't take place.
True.
Yes.
100%.
The reality is for each of us, there's always a catalyst that either triggers that, okay, we've reached that line and there will be no further. There is. Each person has that. For me, I here's the thing. When I say I'm going to champion a cause, I can figure out a way. I brought it in once and there was no money. I can figure out a way to prove it works and work through the process to get the money. Is anything ever funded fully? God, not in this world, unless of course it's defense. And then, yes, it is. But the thing is,
that's not funded fully. That's borrowed fully.
Well,
okay. Here's a
problem. It's not free money. It's never free money. We all pay for it.
So we've all heard the stories about the institutions being shut down, and nobody ever knows why they were shut down. They don't know who signed the bill into law to shut them down. Reagan catches the blame for that.
Well, but it was a young courts.
No, it was a young senator.
So a lot of the rulings regarding asylums had to do with the courts, and the courts recognizing that the asylums denied the basic human rights of the individual.
You're talking later on. The law was signed to shut them down in the 50s.
Okay.
Because a not then president, but a future president's sister was lobotomized by her father.
Yep. Miss Kennedy.
Kennedy wrote those laws when he was a senator. Mm-hmm. That was in the 50s.
Right.
And then the early 50s.
Yeah.
But they had a twilight clause where instead of shutting them down, they were going to be defunded. Right? They were just going to slowly eke away the fund federally. So you hear the story. What's that one in New York that became the horror show? Go look at it in the 50s.
Yeah.
It wasn't a horror show in the 50s. Look at it in the 60s.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
What's the name of that?
It's on the island out in the middle of the bay.
It's famous. Well, it was a part of a town because this all lays into it. But they slowly defunded it, and the feds defunded it, and the state couldn't pick up the cost. States are finding this out now that that's hard to do, with all these government plans, and they defunded it. Now, Could asylums be funded? Sure. I think if the feds are going to fund them, I think the feds should select one place, or the feds manage the place totally, and the states don't carry that burden. Makes it easier to account for whatever. But however they do it, that's neither here nor there. I'm not a smart person. I'm not a planner, but I do like history. But when you talk about the courts start pushing them out, that was after the defunding started.
Well, and
Hold on.
the interviews and the investigation into
Hold on. So what happened was, through the 60s, they started defunding them. So when you started out, when you had a nurse for every 4 patients between 61 and 69, that number changed to where it was a nurse for every 15 patients. And then you move into the 70s, and then it was a nurse for every 30 patients by the end of the 70s. And then you move into the horror show, was the late 70s, when I think that place starts with a B. But anyways, you move in there, and people were still dropping off. Even before then, people would drop off. They had handicapped children or handicapped adult children. Usually they would drop them off there, because if you're, 65 years old and burned out by life and barely support yourself, it's going to be kind of hard for you to support a handicapped child who's an adult who can't support themselves.
Right.
So they would drop them off there. So when you look at the pictures of them in the 70s, you would have this place full of 500-600 people, and you'd have 4 staff. And what they would do is, it was cheaper to buy handcuffs, and they would just handcuff them to a bed. And that was when the courts
sedate them.
They didn't even sedate them, because sedation costs continual money. Handcuffs you buy once. And so that's when the courts started stepping in, saying no. And so what they did is they just let him go. And then you had a whole bunch of stories popping up of crazy people living in the woods kidnapping kids, which did happen.
That was in New York.
Yes.
Long Island.
I'm trying to think of the name of the place.
You're right. It was on an island.
But it actually, it's a true story. I did a whole deep dive into this thing. But that was all because one politician had a personal grudge because his dad didn't like that his little sister liked to kiss boys behind the dance hall. And that is exactly how it panned out. And I'm not saying JFK's bad for doing it. I would have the same grudge. But
we have so many victims of mentally ill folks. And like your friend, he's a repeat offender when it comes to the R word.
And he's also a victim of it.
Sure. But those people cannot be rehabilitated.
No.
Child abusers, sexual abusers, they're not rehabilitated.
Well,
they are always a danger to children.
Okay. And I'm not arguing one way or the other. I am just saying that the Constitution does have a part to play in those decisions. As far as what the people, society is in and of itself decides is the best way to move forward, in that society hasn't always made the best decision, and the individual has not always made the best decision. The thing here is what is the correct course of action? As far as you have our legislature, let's take Utah's legislature. Utah's legislature has consistently decriminalized drugs. Consistently decriminalized. It's gone from a felony 2 to a felony 3. Then it's a class A. Then you have senators and you have House members saying it's a victimless crime. And then you have people on the streets high, leaning up against buildings and not going to work, not being a public part or a part of society. And so you have our legislators being bullied, being on a crusade, whatever the hell it is they want to call it. It doesn't change the fact that the life at the junior high that gets high on meth is now over. So can you tell me why it's not a capital punishment to ruin a child's life with drugs? How is it not a go to prison and rot till hell freezes over? Because the parent, sorry, the parent who now has a lifetime of things coming up missing, kicking the kid out, bringing the kid back, dealing with the schools. The schools don't do anything anymore. They don't stop gang members from being in the schools. Kid can shoot up a McDonald's in Taylorsville, and then, hey, we got to bring him back. Why?
Yeah, and the violent psychosis in the house.
So
No,
there's so many things, but the point is the legislators, the citizens are all the same thing. The citizens keep the same people decade after decade after decade in the business. They're getting
why?
rich. What job are they doing? They're
Do
not.
you know why they do that?
I have my theories.
I know exactly why. One, the person that in there has a known name. That's number one. How many people have met their state senator?
I've met a few, yeah.
But how many people in your neighborhood has met your state senator?
Probably very few.
I've talked to mine. I've never shook his hand. How many people has met their state rep? A few more, but still the same. How many people have met their national rep? How many people on the street could you go up to and say, who's your city councilman?
Well, I've got one for you. If you can point out a public servant, how many people can say what they've done, positive or negative?
Well, but if you look at it, a lot of people aren't familiar. Right. So when it comes time to vote, I don't generally vote. I just don't, because I happen to enjoy the privilege of not having to do that. And, I think
you're obligated to.
I vote once in a while. I don't think you're obligated to. I want them to restrict the vote. I'd like to go back to, 1803. Maybe you've got to be a person that has X amount of skin in the game to even carry a vote, because let's face it, things ain't gone so well since.
Well, as long as
you're saying women shouldn't vote.
Well, the 19th Amendment,
people that can't vote aren't ruled by the decisions made by those who do. I guess that would work. But
no. How do I put?
I think
now, the 19th Amendment.
I think voting is a civic obligation.
I do not think so. I do not think it's a civic obligation to march someone in and say, we have offered you a shit sandwich or a giant douche.
Well, that's
which one do you want to taste?
See, here's the thing.
Then you march in, and
I got to be absolutely honest with you. The reason we have the shit sandwich or the douche is because the American population allows it to be that way.
It's not just the American population, and it's not just now. It's every time throughout history.
Yes.
At every moment throughout history, from the dawn of man, after Eve ate that apple, we had this decision, and we will continue to have it. We will always have it. It will always be there.
The journey is in making the decisions as a result of that one.
Now,
and I gotta say something to that.
Hold on, but I was in the middle of a point here. Now, the 19th Amendment didn't just codify voting for women. It codified suffrage universally. Okay. So when I say the 19th, everyone says, oh, the women's right, but it was universal rights. But I honestly think that if you have communist leanings, you should not be allowed to vote in my country.
Why?
How do we prove that?
Why? Because you want to strip me. Your inherent nature is to want to strip me of my individual rights to survive on my own terms.
But how do we prove who has communist intent? I mean,
there you go. That way you make it so that if people have...
The Constitution prevents you from making that decision.
Tell me about Mom Donnie now.
Oh, good God. First of all, I would have to be able to tell you how New York or California hasn't just fallen in the friggin' ocean. As far as why they vote for the people they vote for, I don't know. But I can honestly tell you that I would rather have the argument, which is what this country is predicated on, than to just arbitrarily ban people because of their beliefs to not be able to do something. Because then my problem comes, who's deciding who's in the majority?
Yes.
So
who decides who's the communist? Who decides what is not okay?
I'll just start out with people who say they're communists.
But I'm saying
We'll
with
just
I'm not
start
saying they're
simple
my
there.
favorite. I'm not saying communist. You can't show me ever where communist has ever worked. But then again,
No.
we're also talking about young people. We had to tell them stop eating laundry detergent.
Sure. And then when they grow up and mature, then we'll give them the vote. Just because you can't vote now doesn't mean you won't be able to mature to vote in the future.
I'm just curious what your guidelines would be
You'll
for someone
able
to
to
be able to
vote
do
when you are 18 years of age.
Now,
Here's
here's
the
my
thing,
thing.
guys.
What they're pushing for right now is 16.
Go. What you got, Holly? Throw it out there. What you got?
So I think that the very important thing is that when you see two individuals running for a seat and you don't like either, then your obligation is to step
Run
in.
yourself.
Run yourself.
Step
Before
in.
taking rights away from American citizens.
Okay, let's picture this
you
right
put
now.
your name in.
Let's picture this right now. So we got two guys running for sheriff right now. Both of them in the state of Utah, you have to be law enforcement qualified to be sheriff, correct?
Correct.
Right. Tell me again if I didn't like both of them. How would I do that? Step in.
Then you go to police academy and you become a law enforcement. The same
At
with our county
50
attorney
at
and
50
same with our
years old,
auditor.
At 50 years old, I don't think you can go to posting.
That's
Utah.
what they're taking a very individual seat. Let's say it's governor. Let's say it's Senate, House. You have to be a police officer to run for sheriff. You have to be a lawyer to run for state attorney.
This country was built on people who saw a problem and got involved. The fundamental reason this country is in the shape it's in is because people stopped believing in real ability and started believing in fake ability. I have a friend of mine who is a judge, and he tells me religiously that we have the brightest young people of any generation that has ever walked this earth. My response to that is a 50-year-old knuckle-dragging individual who spent a lot of time in the Navy, who loves a good polyester pileup every now and then, wears an American flag, has it out front of my hat, and I don't give a damn what anybody thinks. My response to that was this: as long as the electricity holds out.
Exactly.
Well,
because if you can Google it, you're a genius. But here's the thing. How many people remember how to make a sandwich or how to make something that was back in the days of the Depression? Nobody.
I will tell you,
So
I think the reason our country is where it is, well, a couple of reasons. Number one, geography. We have geography is heaven on earth. We have a continuous area that is mineral and natural resource rich. It has a giant river that cuts it right in half. Geography. Second reason is when they first started off this nation, they declared one thing that has been the true test for the survivability of a colony since the dawn of time, and that is property rights. We were the first to codify them. Property rights are the most important thing ever.
Next to life and liberty.
They're the most important thing ever. That first colony set up, Jamestown, failed 3 years. Anyone know why?
No, tell us.
No property rights. It was ran as a communist colony. Everything went through the company. The fourth year they put in property rights, became a permanent success after that.
In the initial writing of the Declaration of Independence, it was life, liberty, and property. And they've taken that out and put in pursuit of happiness.
Mhm.
But those three things right there kind of sum up what it's meant to be a free American. and you owned the property. It was yours. It was your homestead to grow, to build, to raise a family on,
Or to
with your
fail.
freedom and your
Provided
liberty.
you were male,
Not in all circumstances.
but
In many
quite a few of
places-
them, they were.
Many places, many circumstances, females were allowed to own property. In many circumstances, they weren't, but also that was a part of the law because have you ever read any of the anti-suffragette
Yeah.
papers?
A little bit. I haven't gotten too much into it.
That is interesting. Once you dig into that, it changes your mind on a lot of that. You know, they always argue we weren't allowed to have credit cards. They also weren't allowed to be dragged into court for non-paying of bills. They also weren't allowed to be held responsible for financial decisions. So once they got that, and then in 74, when they allowed that responsibility, look at it today. Most of the personal debt is carried by females. Most of your disastrous financial situations in the United States is suffered by females.
Interesting.
Now, I'm
I'm curious what you all think.
not saying that females are inherently unable to handle this, but it does make you wonder if there isn't natural lessons that aren't learned genealogically.
Many of them take jobs that will allow them to be more home when needed. So the jobs don't pay as much as a job that you can work 12-hour days.
That would argue that when women moved into the workplace after World War II, or stayed in the workplace after World War II, that decision may have increased the economy substantially for America's future. But it also brought on a degradation of the family, which then led to the decline of society. So
absolutely,
it also
comes to everything.
It also doubled the tax burden. It made it so the supply and demand equation in the workforce made it so that the workers no longer had a competitive status. And ever since then, we've been dying on the vine. It was not actually after World War II, the women went back home. They came back in the late 60s, early 70s. And that's when you see pay has stagnated since that day. The other thing that it
feminist movement too.
It did a lot of heavy things. There's multiple studies out there. You're not allowed to quote them in polite society, but there's multiple studies. But it doubled, doubling of the tax burden, all that. It did a lot of interesting changes, and it makes you wonder if would that have happened 100 years before under the similar circumstances. And I doubt it, because 100 years before, the workforce was almost exclusively manual labor. But the other thing that no one ever accounts for when they talk about the high taxation during the 50s and the 60s and how the U.S. had an explosion during the 50s and 60s, the one thing nobody ever talks about is our only global competitor was just leveled by a world war. Because the reason they could tax so high, Europe was a wasteland. You couldn't send a manufacturing plant over to Europe.
Still,
it was unavailable. They had no roads or rail left that could deliver materials to your plant. So everything came here. We exploded because there was a world war that destroyed our competitor.
Right.
And that is the number one reason. Nobody ever accounts for that. That's the biggest reason why we were allowed to do that.
You also had women and the birth control era where it empowered women, and the feminist movement started, and that also took a lot away from the family, and women left the house to go work. Women divorced husbands, for any reason, but they would get divorced. And then you have the movement of getting money and help from the government.
Yeah, no fault divorce did a lot of damage.
And then the government is paying for your children and for your housing, and more so than a man could afford consistently. The women are collecting quite a bit. Single moms could, if they're on all the programs, they're getting tons of money for food. They get their insurance covered, at least for their children, housing subsidized. I mean, it comes to like 60,000 of services. Why would they go to work at that point?
Well, we learned that after COVID, that why go to work when the checks still come and everything.
And the checks
else.
were bigger.
You know, the reality, I mean, first of all, I think in my world, the things that dictate how I view things is an absolute, well, I believe in the American experiment. And does the American experiment change throughout the years and the times? And yeah, it does. You know, there's a saying that, and the show escapes me, but there's a saying that on the American dollar bill, on one side is the portion of the seal where it is the unfinished pyramid. And that the unfinished pyramid, America, is an unfinished work. It is always in the process of being made better, or being, it's always a working process. And the I at the top is that of God. So God favors our undertaking, which is that America is never finished. America will always be a work in progress. And, you know, I was having a conversation with someone the other day. When I was young, people asked you, you know, what did you think of Kennedy, or what did you think? You know, for me, Ronald Reagan was a man who always made me feel that being American was an amazing privilege.
I agree.
But it came with unbelievable amounts of responsibility, accountability, and citizenship. The thing is America today, in my humble, useless opinion, and I know I'm nobody in this wide world of people, but people don't want to be held accountable, because if they are held accountable, then they're responsible. And it's easier to make it somebody else's fault. You know, when I screw up at work and I'm not nice to a citizen, and the chief or somebody calls me and says, Ryan, did you drop the F-bomb, or did you tell this person to sit the hell down and shut up? Yeah. Why did you do that? I'm trying to control a scene, violence everywhere, and I have 3 people yelling. Everybody's getting told, shut up. That's how it is. I have a job to do, and nobody dying is top on that list. So if the fact that somebody's a little butthurt, you know, when I was a kid, if you got hurt, if you got injured, if you got beat up, you learned a lesson. There's nothing wrong with pain. There's nothing wrong with tears. There's nothing wrong with your world becoming a little dark. Because frankly, it's the Depression, it's the World War that teaches everybody that sacrifice and service, accountability, responsibility, and citizenship are the only damn things that keep this whole thing somewhat together. And, you know, whether it's the feminist movement, or whether it's the, you know, or whether it's Antifa, or whether it's any of these things. I had a lady call me today and ask me, if I'm elected sheriff, what would I do if the government of the United States tried to do away with the Constitution? And she specifically said, what would I do if a Democratic president tried to do away with the Constitution? I said, ma'am, you have to watch Democrats and Republicans. Doesn't matter what you do. The Constitution was written by people who knew you had to watch every hand that was in the pot. And it didn't matter what they quote unquote said they believed in. It matters what happens when nobody's looking.
Right.
And the only thing that brings this country around is either a massive world war or a depression where people realize that your tears your hopes and your dreams and all those fabulous things that you believe you're entitled to don't mean a hill of beans when your stomach is rumbling and your children are hungry. And I don't have children. But you know what? Would I hurt somebody in honor of somebody else's child if they were doing something wrong? Absolutely. The thing here is, we as a society can find a way. What is the way? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But what we can do is recognize the only things that matter. You can be, what is it? Give me a celebrity that thinks they're all that. What are those Kardashian things?
Kim Kardashian.
You take one of those and airlift it, butt and all, out onto the Serengeti and wait 24 hours. I wonder what their bodily worth is then. I'll tell you, nutrients to whatever cat they didn't outrun. There's no paparazzi, there's no court, there's no police, there's nobody that cares. The simple reality is we have been too long without real trials and tribulations for people to get reset by that typewriter so that people that are young can learn why old people were the way they were.
I've got
it doesn't work.
I've got two comments. One, all right. So I gave you a hard push earlier, and I want to say I appreciate that you leaned on the constitutional rights of the individual. So thank you for that. I think that's important. That is one of my utmost values, that people are allowed to practice their constitutionally given rights.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Have you read the Fourth Turning?
No, I have not, actually.
Have you heard of it?
Yes, I have.
It's an interesting read, and I've read it 4 times now. And you just alluded me to that, why older people are the way they are. And it postulates that cultural personalities are generational, and they move through these phases, and it makes you wonder if say something like World War II, they're a hero generation, and universally the way they thought and the way they acted, and they're a hero generation, and they operated like that, and they went and they sacrificed in mass all together in that. And then the generation that follows the hero generation is always, they call it the artist generation, but it's the boomers now
Who benefited from.
and they and every time when they've studied this throughout history, they're always the generation that sells off the good works for their own personal gain.
Is this the hard men create? There you go.
It is, but they look at this historically. They track things historically.
Sorry.
She's trying to control.
It's a fan because
I saw it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But and then I asked myself, because I like to postulate weird things when I can't sleep at night. Would any of those situations happen if it was a different generation? Would the boomers have shown up for the world against the Nazis and the imperialist Japanese like the heroes did? And the heroes were led by the generation, the silence before them. Would that have happened? And then I'm a Gen Xer, and would the Gen Xers have shown up the same? We're called a nomad generation.
Yeah, we raised ourselves. You're a Gen Xer too, Ryan.
So all these things, they float. It's interesting. It's just I a long time ago I did a stint in government law enforcement, and that gave me a passion for kind of armchair psychology and social psychology. So I like to read about that stuff and study that stuff and kind of explore why why people do what they do. What's the traits that come out of people? What can I, and I'm pretty good at kind of predicting what's going on next by looking at it through that prism. But I look at it kind of separate from it. Like I don't put skin in the game when I look at it. I think if you put skin in the game, your prediction is going to be skewed. So I try to step back and look at it.
Do you know what one of the most amazing things to me is? I have a lot of friends through my time in the military do you know what one of the number one things people of other countries that come visit this country say about Americans? They're always entirely too nice. They're always saying, how are you? Where are you from? Wanting to talk to you, this, that, and the other. And I'm over here as a cop thinking, oh God, please don't talk to me. You know, I every day I'm like, I just need, give me 5 minutes. And the thing is that it brings to, my grandmother used to talk about never let the balloon hit the carpet. No matter what you do, there's always some part of humanity that stops the balloon from hitting the carpet. It stops the world from hitting rock bottom. And, you know, if you look at the greatest generation, because of the way they stood up, do I believe that our generations today would? Well, when 9/11 happened, yeah, they did, and they did very quickly. And it wasn't a race thing. They didn't care. It became a race thing later, but Americans stood up, and everybody became, what is it? We're all New Yorkers. We're all this, we're all that. The thing is, the greatest generation had two things that no successive generation has had since. It is easier to stand against evil when you have just pulled yourself out of a depression that taught you that only survival is real, and you can want in one hand and you can shit in the other hand. See which one gets full first. So when you have a depression of 10 years and people have to learn how to do everything, how to reconstruct because everything fell apart, then you have World War II breakout. You have those things. You have a generation of people who had just been raised through what was, up until then, the most disastrous part of this country's history based on their experience. And then this other problem came up. And to be honest with you, when you watch your kids die of polio or tuberculosis, and you watch, like Nixon's family had several of Nixon's brothers, I think it was 2, die of, tuberculosis. And you had so many things just destroyed by this depression. Honestly, fighting Hitler, well, it gave him a chance to go to Europe.
And eat 3 times a day.
I mean, there was a lot of people that are like, shit, with what we've been through. I mean, if somebody came up to me and said, Ryan, there's a civil war starting next week, am I going to be easier to function in that than, say, somebody who's never been through some of the things I've been through? Yeah. Does it mean I want to? No. But am I going to be better at it than some? Yes.
I find those postulations interesting. Well, the things I wonder about it are, well, one, I want to mention that the Reagan administration and all subsequent administrations after him did an excellent job at boosting the positive outlook of the military.
Yeah. Once they,
if had 9/11 happened in 75, they would have to restart the draft to occupy a ship off the coast of anywhere, because in 1975 there was not a positive outlook on joining the military, and that's because we just had Vietnam, which was the ugliest war that we've ever seen.
And many were drafted for that, and it wrecked a lot of people.
It was super mismanaged. Also, I wonder how this generation would have done had fighting the war in Iraq involved you get deployed with no go home day. Go home day is when we've won.
Well, I'm going to be
Because
honest.
that's a big difference, psychological difference. Because those guys in World War II, they got kicked over there, and go home was when they won. Or actually, it was long after when they won. They had the points spread to go home, or if you got injured to where you were no longer sustainable for the U.S. military. So that was different. I wonder how my generation would have managed that. I'm not saying anything bad about my generation. And would we have the hero generation without the Great Depression? That's
It's
another
an
big
interesting
question.
thought, but I will tell you this much. When I was on board the USS Princeton, the standard deployment is 6 months. Well, nowadays it's 9, but then it was about 6 months. And then you have surf and turf. Well, surf and turf is lobster and steak. So when you pull out lobster and you pull out steak to a kid who's 19 on the cruiser Princeton in the middle of the Northern Arabian Gulf, and he looks at all the gray people and the pot-bellied petty officers and the people who haven't passed a push-up requirement in 10 years, wanting to know why they're making these jokes and what's going on? What's going on? And I look at this kid and I say, we're not going home. What? Yeah. Whenever you get surf and turf, you're staying.
Well, yeah, they do have extensions. My brother,
They just did one. They just showed one on
Yeah,
the news.
the thing
My
This
is-
brother-
guy is eating surf and turf.
my brother, when he got sent over there, they forgot him. And he ended up staying an extra 2 or 3 months.
But you know what?
He got separated from his unit. He was further up north. And when his unit rotated back, they forgot him. I'm not shitting,
Yeah.
good old U.S. Army. But no, World War II, if you left, the order said you're going to this theater.
Right.
And there wasn't until this day,
Right.
or projected until this day. So they went over and they possibly some of the units fought through Africa.
Yeah.
And
And then
then-
they went into Sicily.
And then they went
into
up through
Lower
Italy.
Mhm.
And then they went into France and then through Belgium and then into Germany. They conquered Germany. Hitler offed himself. They were still in Germany. And we're talking 13 months after the Nazi party's gone. They're
Well,
still
yes,
there.
But America
Some of them were
fights-
there 5 years.
Sure, but America fights World War III in snippets.
Maybe. I think World War III is going to be a war we don't recognize.
Well,
It's
yeah,
not gonna
probably,
be-
but if you look at it, we've already gone to Iraq twice, Afghanistan. Now we're bombing the hell out of Iran, and you got Ukraine popping off, so something could go wrong there. So the thing is
Venezuela.
we haven't fought a world war. And the reason why I am convinced that people would stand up, even the purple hair with the nose ring, even those, the reason why I'm convinced that they would is because the American spirit cannot exist without somebody causing a problem. There has to be a challenge for each generation to identify with. And every time the generations do the same thing, they make a meme, a tasteless joke, a cartoon, a saying, but it's always shoulder on the burden and move on. And even though this generation today does it with a lot more crying and talking about their feelings than they do, you can go over there and fill sandbags and talk about how your fingers hurt. That's fine, but it doesn't mean they're not there. Sometimes they're not, but I refuse. Me personally, I have never, when I served in the military, I never ran across sailors, Marines, or airmen, or Army who you couldn't see their grandfathers and their fathers in their eyes. Every time I used to march sailors when I was the RPOC in boot camp, or when I was a leading airman, or when I was a petty officer, I would always tell people, when you're marching, you look down, you see the shadow as it grows out. Those are your fathers and your uncles and your grandfathers and your great-grandfathers who came before you doing the same thing you are doing now. America does not fail. We fail in the long run in terms of what should we be doing. There's too goddamn many chiefs, not enough Indians. There's a whole lot of reasons why things happen. But the inherent, the idea, the experiment that Lincoln talked about hasn't failed. The idea of Reagan, Reagan made people proud to be American. Reagan made it okay to be an American again, where Nixon and Carter, not so much. But the thing is, it took remembering why Americans are good people for Americans to shift back and to do better. Are we always doing better? Hell no. I had a lady yelling at me not 2 weeks ago that I needed to drain the swamp in my campaign. And I was like, ma'am, who's the swamp in this context?
Right. And how do you have the power to do that?
So we see a problem. What makes America different is when an American citizen sees a problem, whether it's the kid with Down syndrome that dreams of being a business owner, or whether it's the kid who raises money for the veterans while running with one leg. It doesn't matter who or why or what the motivation is. Never has an American failed to step onto the field. Now, we may fuck it up a lot, and there may be a lot of, sorry about my language, a lot of problems with the process, but we don't fail to show up.
That's true.
And we never,
unless it's at the voting booth.
Well, but that's the thing. But the thing is, citizenship is more than just voting, but
Right.
Citizenship is owning the problems. So, when the people in Iran say, like, people will talk to me as an officer and they'll say, why are you so against immigrants? I'm not against immigrants. I don't have a problem with immigrants. What I am against is I have to stand with a phone in this hand and try and write in this hand while there's a translator on this phone to talk to someone who's been here for 23 years and they've never learned English.
Right.
Why? I am not anti-immigrant, but what I am is there is a saying that you can go to Germany, but you cannot become German. You can go to France and you cannot become French. You can go anywhere else in this world and you cannot become what they are. But in this country, you can go to America and you can become American. If you integrate and you're from wherever the hell on this planet you are, you integrate, you bring your culture, you be proud, but you don't fly another damn flag while you're talking shit on my country and talking about how great yours is, yet you're here. But if you come here to be a positive factor, to love America, love where you're from, because I'm telling you, go to Boston and say some shit about Ireland and see what happens. You're going to get your ears pushed together because some Mick is going to do that. You don't have to lose who you are to come here, but you have to gain who we are to stay.
Well, I view it simply as this I am, well, one, the not voting makes me the only true Republican here, and I'm an independent. So we'll just lay that out.
What does that mean?
You guys are all Democrats wanting to force votes.
Yeah,
and
Reagan wouldn't make a Republican primary if he tried.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, that's thrown tongue in cheek, but I believe it's an obligation as a citizen to have a say in
all
your
Democrats do.
representative republic.
It's great. All Democrats do. I'm a Republican. But I want to say that as long as we maintain a welfare state, we can't have open borders. By nature, I'm an open border kind of guy. I believe open borders would. I believe open borders are a boon on the economy, and we've always seen stronger cultures come out of those cultures that have the most contact. If anyone ever asks why is Africa so far behind, it's because Africa is the largest single landmass that has the fewest available ports. And that's why Africa never learned. Africa never grew because it never got to trade ideas.
But we also have.
But allow me to finish, please. But as long as we maintain a welfare state, you can't have open borders.
Exactly.
You can't have people that will blend in and blend out at their material well-being at the cost of the people who are sustaining it. You just can't.
And that'll never change.
It's for me, open borders, not open borders. I mean, honestly, I sit there and I ask myself, is the problem an open border or closed border or the failure to set a standard? If you have an open border and if you establish waypoints that people have to meet when they come here, and they meet them, fine.
Well, when I say open border, I mean completely porous. And what I mean by that is I don't think we can have a porous border and have a school system that will take a fresh across the border, just a migrant moving across the border's child in, or a hospital system that is forced by power of the state to take in an immigrant. I think the free market needs to make that decision on whether, and yes, it sounds cruel, but as it stands right now, how many people will cross the border in Brownsville, Texas, and go to a hospital in Texas because the state forces that care to be taken right
and
there?
Have a child.
And that's foist over on all of the taxpayers, which puts a burden on the taxpayer system to where, one, the taxes are never going to be caught up. The taxpayers are never going to get relief. And eventually they're like, people start thinking, it ain't working. So what do I care?
Well, they have a child too, and then that sets them up because now they have an American citizen who can use our welfare state and bring them over. It is a problem, and I think you can't address it until the border is absolutely secure and we start having new policy for immigration, like go back to the sponsorship system where someone is vouching for this person, employing this person, and providing their insurance or whatever. And that way, this person is not dragging on the welfare state. We know who they are. We have their fingerprints. They have given an immigration ID, a green card or something, and they must be attempting to become a citizen if that's what they're here for. Many are just here to work and go back. And that even has been a problem because their green cards are getting tied up when they're just seasonal. They come here to pick crops. They go back home. They try to come back next year, but they got to go through the process again. And it just gets hard on the owners of the company. It gets hard on the people.
I have said many, many times that why does it take someone 15 years to become a citizen of the United States?
A lot of it's because of money. It's very, very expensive to become
expensive, but why is it so
immigrant?
Expensive? Because here's my thing. Most of the red-blooded American people born here couldn't pass a citizenship test if they tried.
Amen.
So the reality there is, how come it's so expensive when the ones born here can't even do it and they don't get charged anything?
The reason it's so expensive
in citizenship.
Well, the reason it's so
it's
so expensive is because it's worth it. And that's borne out on long-term outcomes, financial and just well-being outcomes of
And the
immigrants.
intent. Yeah.
But it's just
worth it.
it's
So you're
just-
going to
it's
give
worth
what
it.
you
It's
can.
worth it, but it shouldn't take 15 years for someone
Now,
to become citizen. of the
while
United States. Sorry.
while I agree with you, and look, I don't know the ins and outs. All I know is that you can see a machine that's built where the machine has all these offerings to an immigrant at the cost of the taxpayer. And then you open a porous border that overloads all these facilities available to them, that overloads them more. And then a certain class of American cries for that to be maintained at any cost, even though the majority of that class are children of wealthy people who their life is sustained by their parents. So they argue for something they don't carry the burden of. Now, if they have kids, their kids might carry that burden, but they don't. So you get it to where your schools get overwhelmed, and people always say, well, it's such a small percentage, but I like to break everything down into your household income. And if next year you lost 5% of your household income just like that, no excuse, no reason, no accounting, it was gone, that would be a disruption to your life as you live it today.
Sure.
Would it be survivable? Sure. But that would be a loss, right? That would be something that you probably wouldn't be pleased, right?
You probably have to
Just like
sacrifice
if you
something.
got a 5% raise, that would be a change to your lifestyle as it is today. Well, if you have schools that take on just 5% of students, or really how you can look at it is you can look at to where they don't have to take on 5% of students. They just have to adjust the faculty's ability to focus on the job by 5%. So even 1% of students can pull the faculty away by 5% if there's a language barrier.
Right.
If there's a cultural disruptive barrier. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that causes a burden that's felt through the whole community. And it's felt monetarily, it's felt high school outcomes, it's felt
Educationally.
safety, it's everything. So if you have a welfare state, and what I mean by a welfare state is the state has provisions, and you also allow immigrants to join
Hi, Jordan.
in those provisions, you automatically leave those provisions open to perversion right off the bat.
Okay.
Now, do U.S. citizens break all these rules and do all the bad things? Yes. My argument there is, does that still mean we should throw that door wide open to everybody to break it? And then along with that, social psychology wise, you get people who come over here just to work and send money home. If they're in a transient mindset, by what I mean by transient is they don't plan on building a life there. They just plan on coming up, making money, sending it home, moving around, floating to wherever's best. They don't care about the culture. Those people are known to litter more. Those people are known to have all the social abuses more often because they're not planning routes, because tomorrow doesn't matter. It's like they're on a working vacation. The working vacation is when you drive the rental car down dirt roads. You'd never take your own car. It's when you go down to the bar and maybe drink a little too much because it's in the very hotel you're in. You start feeling a little, frisky. You start doing crazy stuff. Do all of them do the cross the board crazy things? Not at all. Do all of them do some of it? I don't know. But you get that propensity in that group because they're transient by nature.
And it's a group of folks that wouldn't be here otherwise. So yes, Americans commit all those crimes. Americans do what Americans do, but they're here. They've been here from birth to now. And when you add a whole 5% or whatever it is, now schools literally have to stop the curriculum, go back. Students who are right in the middle of lessons they have to stop so that they can communicate with the kids who don't speak English. And we've had to adjust everything. And these are kids who are not paying for school or paying property tax. Their parents aren't. It can't end well for the taxpayer and for the freedoms and the liberty that you have as being a citizen of this country and what your tax dollars afford you. So it's a big problem. And
I'm not saying that it's not. The problem, again, for me, I think solutions have to be a multi-front thing. When you look at citizenship factors, there's so many people out there that talk about probably twice a day. I will get an email or a text saying, hey, if you become sheriff, are you going to assist ICE? Or if you become sheriff, are you going to assist this agency or that agency? And the reality is, first and foremost, you can never ask a police officer or a person who enforces the law if they themselves are going to abandon the law. If you believe that a person like me should have the ability to decide which laws I'm going to obey, that is the slope you don't come back from. Do you know how many times I have to tell citizens when they call and want me to boot somebody's front door in and take them to jail because they don't like them, that they probably wouldn't want me doing the same thing to them, and then trying to explain to them, I'm the police officer. I am the one everybody on the left says, I don't care about people's rights and I don't care about people. And yet here I am trying to explain to somebody that the value in America is accountability, responsibility. If you have people who are here want to become Americans, like the Irish and the Russians and the Hispanics and the Mexicans and the I don't care where you're from. If your goal is to better your life through becoming a part of this country, a part that cannot be pulled out and set aside because the funding is better somewhere else, I want you to be here to be a citizen, because this country arguably would not be or have the long list of major accomplishments that it has without the mingling of cultures, without the mingling of the different kinds of people and the different experiences their home countries brought. But when I see people bad-mouthing my country while waving the flag of their country in my country, I am naturally brought to ask myself, well, if it's that great, why are you here?
exactly.
That's the part I don't understand. But then I have to look at, okay, what is my role as a law enforcement officer? It is public safety. I am not, I repeat, ladies and gentlemen, anybody listening, I am not the morality police. And I don't ever want to live in a world where I have that power. Do you know how hard it is to get people to understand? You do not want any police officer, any military member, or any armed person who acts on behalf of any government anywhere having the power to say whether your thought is moral or not. I will not accept it, and I will not take it, because that is the end all of end all. The thing about America that, you know, and I don't know how much time we have, but the thing about
Well,
America
we got to close down here pretty soon.
There was and I will give you a visual reference of what America is. And it doesn't matter whether you're blue, whether you're red, or whatever. Recently, there was a fire immediately on the Mexico side of the Mexico-U.S. border. Buildings going up the whole 9 yards. And there is a picture, and I believe it is Texas, it might be Arizona, of American fire trucks with all of their ladders and all of their hoses and everything extended up over the border, putting out this fire. America doesn't step onto the field every time because it's going to benefit us. America doesn't step onto the field every time because God's watching. Americans generally step on the field every time because it's what Americans do. And I haven't seen anything, even though we have fake money. I keep telling people all the time, you worried about the economy failing? Here, pew, plug it back in and reset it to Friday. We're fine. None of this shit exists in the first place. But what does exist is that no matter what's on fire, no matter who's the evil that's come, you're always going to see the red, white, and blue somewhere involved beating somebody's ass. And that's what this country is. And it even with the nose rings and the man buns and wearing flannel and driving a Fiat, I don't understand it. But it happens. But the thing is, they'll still show up.
He just went personal with the whole Fiat thing.
Yeah, I did. I saw it at a concert once, and I was like,
something must have happened today.
Anything's wrong with that. But the thing is, they still show up. They will show up, and they'll argue and they'll bitch and they'll say the Reds are wrong and the Republicans are wrong. And hell, half the people don't even know it is a republic. But the thing is, right, wrong, stupid, moronic, we all show up on the field at the end of the day, and some of them are too stupid to know why they're there. But the simple fact of the matter is, we are always going to be there. And so whether it's my campaign or whether it's my personal life or whatever, if I don't find a way to say something I've been told we can't do, if I don't find a way to make it happen, if it does good for people's lives, then I failed. At the end of the day, that's my standard. I don't care if the American government has failed to maintain its standard. In the end of the day, the only thing I can control is my standard. And sometimes it's too high, and sometimes I don't meet it. But I'll try again tomorrow. And whether I'm elected or whether I'm not, I'm still going to be me come the day after.
His website.
So.
I wanted to, before we kick you loose, this has been a long interview, but it's been very, very informative. I wanted to go over your website and encourage everyone to look there. You did mention a question as whether or not you would work with ICE. I hope that you would. I would rather have ICE connect with you at the jail than go out into the neighborhoods around town to
everything
find.
I've told everyone is the sheriff has to work with any agency that is lawfully conducting its assigned role in law enforcement, national security, whatever the case is. If people are not lawfully conducting their activities, then that's a different story. But you cannot demand a public figure obey the law if your first request is, under these circumstances, will you disobey the law?
Under your platform.
So in here, you have different events. You have the information, which talks a little bit about me. You have the different tabs, and all the information's on there. And if you want to see what I really plan to do, you'll see up here in this corner above me on the phone.
Yeah.
What's my plan? You can click on that right down here, see my plan in detail. It takes you to different aspects, and as you scroll down, it will show you. You can click on these different things. Sorry, these are professional knowledge aspects. But if you go to the different tabs here, it talks about my experience, my history, the U.S. Navy, my beliefs, my principles, who I am, my college degrees, I'll admit I have a college bachelor's degree in the underwater basket weaving of law enforcement. It's called criminal justice. But I do have one. You've got all of these things on the right. They talk about what I plan to do with agency morale and deputy wellness, patrol, corrections, investigations, dispatch. Here's the thing. I have short, medium, and long-term goals. Am I going to get 15 dogs? No. But I need to get some because I need to make sure the capability is there. Do I need 50 motors and 25 traffic officers? No. But do I need to make sure people aren't doing 40 in a school zone where kids are walking out from cars? Because we all know kids don't pay attention because they're kids. I got to try. It's the job of the sheriff to do what they can to make it work. If I don't get everything I want to do, you will know that I tried. And I will give it every ounce of effort that I have. Paul has tried to do many things and he has not failed but he hasn't gotten everything done. I'm not blaming him for not, but I don't believe that an agency should have a capability and then lose the capability and be able to say that that capability went away because it wasn't funded. It didn't go away because it wasn't funded. It went away because it wasn't maintained. And as far as, is the county going to be frugal? Yes, it's why Tooele County is Tooele County. It's why it's not Salt Lake County. So I understand. And that's why if you look at how I plan to do all of my budgetary stuff, I plan to take it to the taxpayer before I even ask the county council.
How would you do that?
Well, like I said, you determine what the program is, you determine what the costs are, you determine what grants are out there to make it revenue neutral. If the remainder can't be covered by your discretionary budget you already have, then I guess it's time to go do some civic meetings. I guess it's time to go out to Vernon to the schoolhouse, or go out to Rush Valley, or go out to Stansbury or fire stations and sit down and say, hey, I'm going to be out there and I'm going to be talking about A, B, and C. I'd like as many of you to come. We're going to be doing this so I can talk to you about these capabilities I think we need. And then you have these honest, frank discussions where you talk about what the capability is. You don't sell it positive or negative either way. You don't say, well, it costs all this, but not explain what the benefits are. And then you let the people decide. If they say, yeah, I think we need that, but we can't afford 3 dogs. Okay, well, a bloodhound is different than a bite dog. And so you may get 2 bite dogs and a bloodhound. But the thing is, all 3 track. So you still have 3 tracking dogs. The
Right.
realities are, what you do, you just sell it to the people who have to buy it. And if you don't win, then you lose. And you may come back a year later and go, okay, what about this? And they may approve it. The thing is, people here want their children to be found when they're missing. They want the drugs to be found. They want the felony bad guys with guns to be out of their neighborhoods. People understand the value of these capabilities. They will fund them. They may not fund them in the way I would like, with 13 dogs. And, that's not what I'm asking for. But they will recognize the value, and they will fund within reason what can be done. So I may only end up with 2 or 3 dogs over the entire time I'm sheriff, which would be no more than 8 years of that, I can guarantee you. The reality is, I would end up with a few motorcycles, because you can do enforcement in neighborhoods with motorcycles better than you can large pickups or huge SUVs, whatever the case is. So you sell it to the people. And then when you get that buy-in, then is when you talk to the county commission. And you gotta, the thing is you have to go to the people and you have to win the argument. You can't do it behind the scenes. You can't hide it. You can't sell it as something that isn't. If you go to people and you tell them why you need stuff, Americans meet you halfway. And halfway may not be what you wanted, but it's halfway further than you were. And so you're further. And then the next year or the next election, you might get something else.
I've put together more than a few town halls in my tenure as a GOP chair. And I've noticed that the sheriff town halls are usually well attended.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you, as an elected, need those same people to show up at the council meeting, they're nowhere to be found. And we have a problem with disengagement out here.
Right.
We've gotten comfortable because we are a pretty well-run county. Mm-hmm. And the sheriff's office, especially, as I told you early on, he's got a great relationship with the people. He works hard and with the council. And I know that there's nothing that every time I've invited him to do an event or do anything, he shows up.
Right.
And not during election years either. Election years are difficult because
Right.
He's got
He shows up during
delegates and things.
Right.
Yeah. And so what I wish is that you folks who are watching, you people who can hear what I'm saying, please get engaged. I know it's an election year, But because it's an election year, you're going to have a lot more ability to get in front of these people. And there's a whole number of events. Do you have it in front of you, Ryan, where the Meet the Candidate night is
Yes,
the first
I've got
one?
those nights, and I will be there.
Where is it and what time? Because you don't just have to be a delegate to attend. We
Right.
appreciate it. But as a citizen, if you want to go meet him, then by all means, go.
As a citizen, decisions are made by those who show up. The reality here is if the council, if I can't get the community to come to the council, here's the thing. If deputies are going to domestics by themselves and we don't have enough money to hire enough deputies, if they're whatever the case is, then I guess the council needs to go on some ride-alongs. And if the council doesn't hear because people don't show up, then I guess the council needs to come out to a few meetings in fire stations. So if the council can't be bothered to do what they need to see, and we can't get people engaged, you know what? I really think that if you're talking about the council, there are some people I've heard that love the council because they're as stringent as they are. And I've heard there are people that are absolutely at their wits' end. But the thing is, I've been to a few council meetings, and I don't know that I've gotten anything from any one of them that says they are doing their job to be a malicious jerk and get deputies killed by keeping the pennies in the coffer. And no, that's not what's happening. So I believe that if you find a way to put everybody in a room, things happen. Now, if the room is in the community because the community can't be bothered, okay.
Well, we got fire stations in every
Yeah,
community, and we've been able to rent those.
We'll do it at the Outlaw. I mean, we can all have pie. I don't.
Where's the first Meet the Candidate where people can come and meet you?
I just had it up. Hold on. The first Meet the Candidate. So you're talking about the party events, not my events. Okay.
Yes.
So I have those for you here shortly.
I highly recommend it, guys. If you want to get an opportunity to speak with both candidates as well as candidates running in your area as well. And that way you can talk with your delegate who hopefully is there and let them know your thoughts on these people running. It's so important as voters that we get to know these folks, all of them, good and bad. And both men in this race are very good men. They love this country. They work really hard for this community. And I mean, this is going to be a really tough race. I'm first to tell you.
You want to have answers to.
Right.
And don't feel stupid if you ask a question you think might be stupid. You're a citizen of the United States, and we make it a point to not be involved in everything our government's doing. That's why they get away with half the crap that they do. Ask whatever question is on your mind. A lady asked today, would I ever enforce mask laws? I answered and it went off the rails and went into other things, but I answered the questions. And if the voters don't like your answer, you don't get into office. But if you tell the truth, you have nothing to put your head down about. If you change your answer because the voter might not like it, you're a liar.
Well, if you believe in the Constitution, then you can easily answer that question.
Yeah, just say what you feel. And if you don't like me because I'm me, okay. I mean, I get it. There's several people that don't. But if you don't like Paul, you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to, you take what you want to see in your sheriff's department and you move on from there.
And I want to see integrity. Yep. I want to see integrity in the race. I want to see integrity in the dealings with the citizens. And I think both of you are capable of that. I mean, absolutely. This is the first time I've seen you in a race, but having seen Sheriff Wimber in the past.
I decided to go against Paul. I mean, he's got a world of experience, but I'm telling you that you know what? Like I said, if I make it, great. If I don't, I am not going to feel bad about this. No woe is me. I have 5 years left in this career, and I will have stood for what I felt was important. And
Yeah. What's Taylorsville think about this race?
you know what? My Chiefs
worried to lose
are 100% supportive. They are. Yeah, they constantly ask me how things are going. They constantly ask me, how am I doing? And I'm able to honestly tell them I haven't a clue. I don't have 13 races. I'm not a president or a prime minister. I vote, and I like history, and I watch documentaries, and I have dogs, and I moved out here to get away from the 2,700,000 people that live in every square foot of Salt Lake County. But what I try to do is be me, and the voters can buy that for 4 years. And if they don't like what I do, we have elections, and you throw the guy out.
So the
you know,
first Meet the Canada night,
I'm
and I
going
love
through the
that.
thing, trying to find
I
it.
found it. It's at
Okay.
Grantsville High School
Okay.
from 6:30 to 9 on March 25th, which is a Wednesday.
Right.
So that's during our show.
Holly will
have
share
to-
this on the page. I do have to go. I have to wake up at 3.
Yeah.
Me too.
But we may have to postpone this show because I'll have to be there
That's fine.
as a candidate, or you can do it without me. But that's the first one, March 25th. Then April 11th, it's a Saturday at Excelsior Academy from 1:30.
So that's
to
next
3:30.
Wednesday.
So yeah, next Wednesday, get out there, go meet Ryan, get to know him, ask him your questions. The sheriff will be there as well. Ask him the questions and get to know these gentlemen. Both of them are looking for a job that requires integrity, character. They're looking for a job that we demand is top notch.
Gotta look
because
good in
our
green
safety, our safety should be at the top of these gentlemen's list, and our constitutional rights, and bring up COVID and how that was handled. I thought it was handled perfectly from our sheriff's point of view. And
Nationally, it was handled like hot garbage.
yes,
Statewide,
parts of the
not
state
hot garbage,
were a
but
mess.
a lot of garbage. I think, when Paul stood up to the county council who wanted him to enforce mask laws, and he stood up to him and said, I am not going to have my deputies enforcing that because, one, it's not a law.
Right.
Let's just call that what that is. It's not a law.
Same
You-
with gatherings.
Yeah, all that crap. You can't just declare you want it to be a law. Well, constitutionally, there's a way shit becomes law.
Right.
That ain't a law. It's just 3 of you
And there are
gathering.
also established constitutional means to allow exigency to circumvent certain things, and suspending the writ of habeas corpus and suspending these other aspects of the Constitution did not occur. And so the Constitution still applies.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I do have to go. There was a lot of comments on Facebook.
A lot of it is yelling at us for not staying on topic with
Yeah,
you, and that's
that's fine.
our bad.
Hey,
But I'll tell you this:
you join this show.
our show is to inform our listeners more than just the campaign promises. We want them to get to know you, your experience, your thoughts. And so I'm sorry, Ann Go, if we didn't go, detailed into the campaign, but all of these things. And thank you, Dax, for sharing that. Grantsville High School at 6:30, March 25th. We'll get to your comments. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. And Ryan, thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah.
You have an
Thank you.
open invitation. So
My
you let
pleasure.
us know if there's something that you want to be on for. We're going through candidates now. And as we get closer to, did you gather signatures?
I am still in the process. I get
Okay.
a
So
lot
you're
of
not going
doors.
convention.
No, I'm trying. I'm still trying until April 3rd is my cutoff.
I gotcha.
Yes, I'm still trying. I'm way behind, but I've been out doing this every weekend since January, and I get a lot of doors slammed in my face, but we're trying.
It's tough to go up against an incumbent.
Sure.
It's tough to go up against an incumbent because that's a name they know.
Mhm.
I think it lives in the same part of our brains as our favorite football team, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I would recommend you reach out to Christina at our county party, the secretary, and ask her for registered voter lists so
We
that
had
you
that
know.
one sent to us, and there weren't phone numbers, so we had
No.
to go to individual homes. And like I said, we got some signatures. A lot of people were upset that we were coming to their homes and stuff, but it's what we have to do to get where we need to be, and so we still try. The 21st from Saturday from 10 to 3, and again the 28th. The Fallen Hero Network and some other people will be out there at Cal Ranch with us with the Kabul 13 truck and some other specialty vehicles for veterans issues. And I'm there to talk about veterans issues as well as police issues. But we'll have hot dogs and we'll just be there. So if you
make sure you get an invite.
Yeah.
Send an invite to all of your county delegates.
I will.
And personally send that invite. And then also you can reach out to us. We'll post it on the show just to get people out there to get to know you. We're happy to do this for all candidates. So
Thank you.
We just want the world to know who you are. So when they get to the ballot box, they have, well, I don't know this person. I'm just going to choose this person. We want them to be informed. And it sounds like you do too. And we would have a lot better society if people really did the research before they went to the ballot
Well,
box.
sometimes getting off topic allows you to learn about the person when they've already posted the platform. So
Yes,
you guys
yes.
be safe.
Yeah.
And if you ever need anything, you know how to find me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you again before it's all said and done.
Anytime.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Be safe.
You too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone, that's the show. I've got to go pass out now.
Yeah, I'm exhausted too. I just want to thank